Thank you very much for having me here today. There's a couple names in this congregation that pop up, and I heard at least one of them today, Fellhofer. Any of you Fellhofers who know Sarah, Stan's daughter, she was part of this trip, the very first trip, and you'll hear a little bit about this. Also, a young man by the name of Kevin Daling. Is this his home congregation? Does anybody know? I know he lives... Okay, somebody knows him back there. You'll see his picture pop up today. When Pastor John talked a little bit about the hearts burning, there's some folks here today in funny colored shirts. They really do get what this is about. They get this so much that truly they would die rather than give up what this is all about. And I know him well enough to say that. So I hope you'll not pay attention to the presenter, but just to the message. As Pastor John said, I really would rather be in the back. I'm more comfortable covered with sawdust, sweat, and dirt than I am up in front of you guys. But God has given us a story, and I want to tell that story to you today. Thank you for asking me here today and for the privilege of being able to talk about some things we've seen. God at work, doing the God thing, and transforming life after life. I want to thank your mission committee and my classmate Hollis Volsky for asking me if I knew anything about Lutheran mission work and would I come and talk to you folks. God is so unbelievable in how he works things out. I first met Angie Berger in August of 2005 when I was a presenter for Ablaze at the Nebraska District Prairie Fire event at Seward. My topic was reaching a hurting and missing generation within the church, young adult ministry in the context of small groups. I'm a student of the eyes because the eyes are a window to the soul. And I knew when Angie Berger came up to talk to me afterwards, there was a deep driving love in her heart for the Lord and for his people. And I knew she understood what I talked about that day. The God thing about me being here is that Hollis knew none of this when he asked me. He said, "Dick, do you know anything about Lutheran missions work?" I have to tell you that coming to congregations like yours is coming home for me. I grew up in a little farm just east of Lincoln, and I understand the life. Sue and I used to farm until that little period of economic readjustment in the 1980s, and then I picked up my hammer and I headed to town. I used to be very active in the Lutheran Laymen's League, and by 1999 we had changed churches to Messiah Lutheran in Lincoln, and I was president of Zone 10. At the same time, Kathy Carter, a member of our congregation, was trying to organize a youth mission trip to Mexico. And I thought trying to connect the Laymen's League with this youth mission trip might be a good thing to do. So I went to one of Kathy's meetings, and when she asked if I'd be willing to go on the mission trip, my brain said, "No way," but my mouth said yes. That was January of 1999. 6 mission trips to Mexico have come and gone. There have been 14 houses, many outhouses, hundreds of shoes, quilts, items of clothing. Hundreds of kids have gone through our VBS ministry, and there's also one very special new church called Lily of the Valley Lutheran Church. There have been battered women's shelters, drug rehab centers, and many other needs and ministry opportunities we've been able to help with. Orphan Grain Train has helped ship dental equipment, a hospital bed, skid loads of supplies from a local company. And I was also surprised when another classmate of mine, Arlen Shellhorn from Staplehurst, said he would be here today, and he would be here to represent Orphan Grain Train. As you can see from the pictures and the captions, we are connected to our friends at Norfolk. Sue recently tallied up what God has provided through the years in funds for the ministry in Tijuana. It's within a freckle of $280,000. We were pretty shocked as we looked back through the past 8 years, 6 trips, and realized how God in his own way has chosen to use ordinary, sinful people to accomplish what he wanted. And I hope you understand there's a group of us together that have part of this work of God. Some of us are here today. Some of us are all around the United States, and one, Rei Sato, was from Japan. When I mentioned before the items of clothing, there's something else that goes along with that I need to talk about. It's the story of one special dress and the people who live around the Tijuana dump. One thing we used to be able to do was to take food and clothes and other needed supplies into the dump people. These are the folks who live around the dump. They're circled in scrappy little dirt-floored shacks, and they live by scavenging through the dump in Tijuana. In 1999, we took these supplies in and gave them away. And as you can imagine, in a very short time, everything was gone. But there still stood one little girl, naked and crying. And then we realized everything wasn't gone. One of our girls who liked to sew had brought a homemade dress to give away. It was the only thing left. The God-sized thing about this dress was that it perfectly fit this little, naked, crying girl who lived in the garbage dump. We're no longer allowed to take stuff into the dump. They banned us from there because of bad publicity, and the folks that are there could still need it, but you just can't get it to them. I want to save the rest of the Tijuana mission story for the mission presentation and the Bible study afterwards, and I understand you guys have some new media aids in there that when I walked back and looked, it looked pretty good, so I hope you folks will come for that. I'll not be able to tell you of the life after life we've seen change, but I'll try to tell you just a little of how God has been at work in the lives of so many around us. I want to talk about the Ablaze part of today. How did some ex-farm boy with a high school education who swings a hammer for a living end up at Seward Concordia talking to a bunch of church folks? How did I end up here today? The journey started about 2 weeks after we'd returned from our first trip to Mexico. Two old people named Dick and Sue had just had God turn their lives inside out and had broken their hearts for young people and the people of Mexico. We got home one night, and there on our kitchen counter was a letter. It was a letter from a young lady who God had brought into our lives in a very special way. And the letter said, "Dear Dick and Sue, I just want you to know how much this trip meant to me, because you see, I'd planned on killing myself the Friday night before we left. As Sue can tell you, our lives have been just like that picture since that day. In the last 8 years, God has taught us what the world of today's kids is like. And here's the lessons that we've learned, and here's some of what I shared at the Ablaze Prairie Fire event.